my prescription sunglasses. So
Oh my.
I'm going to put them on when I see.
I'm Charlie Mitchell with the city of Dallas, and I want to kick it over. We have the mayor, council president, and city manager here with us this afternoon. I wanted to give them an opportunity to welcome.
Thank you for all taking the time out to see what our vision is for this 791 Main Street. I don't know if you all know, but this property has been vacant for 10 or 12 years that I know of. And with some hard work on Charlie's behalf and Brian's behalf, we've been able to acquire the property and demo the building. And now our vision is what we're about to present to you. So we're thrilled to see that there's some excitement behind this. The council fully endorses this, and we're just hoping that we can find enough interest to meet our needs. So thank you.
I really don't have much to add to what Larry said, but welcome to Dallas. If you had a chance to look around any or around, you know, it's a beautiful town, right kind of in the center of wine country here. So, and really close to the coast and Salem and just an hour from Portland. So, great location for people looking to come and get around and see the site. So I think it's a great opportunity. A lot of planning has been going into it, and I hope that you're happy and enjoy the presentation today.
Speak. That's great. So I'm Brian Latta, the city manager here, and this is a project that the community I think is excited about. They're wanting to see some more stuff going on in our downtown, and with the good work of Charlie and his team and the support of the council and the mayors, not only current but past, we're really excited about this project, and just very happy of the interest that we're getting and just the vision. We want to see something great there, and we know with the right partner we can make that happen. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, guys. So the moment I'm going to turn it over to Brian Hanneman, who's our consultant. Thanks for making any kind of walking through we're going to hit the streets and go take a little bit of a tour. Just want to add to what's been said already. Just that I think I have this gut feeling that Dallas is one of those places just kind of on the cusp of something really big happening. And so it's like, if you wanted to be an early investor in Microsoft or Nike, it's like, if you're an early investor in the future of Dallas here, I really think some big things are going to happen here. We're just on that cusp right now. As was mentioned, there's a lot of, I think, excitement and support in the community for this project, for some new investment in downtown Dallas. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who's our paid consultant, has been leading us through this whole process and getting us to this point and beyond. So, Brian, thanks. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, councilors. Thank you, City Manager Brian Latta, and thank you all for being here. I'm going to talk about a bunch of things just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. I know we have a few people online. Hello to you. I guess I'm on camera. I'm going to kind of underscore, I think, the things that others mentioned, what the city's vision is, a little bit about the market, how we see potentially the deal structure going forward, and what we're asking for in the request for qualifications. There's a site, 791 Main. We're in City Hall, so just kitty corner across the county courthouse square. I'll talk a little bit more about site particulars, but this is as good of a site as you could hope for, I think, in downtown Dallas. I love the views, location, proximity to other historic buildings, some of which I'll talk more about. I did want to orient, if you haven't been to the website, it's got a lot of useful resources. I know that the link is probably way too small to actually view, but if you don't know what it is, so if you don't have the RFQ document itself, which I left on my chair, let me or Charlie or Tyler know and give us your email. We'll get it to you. But this is the website, and at the bottom of the website, the city's website, it's got a whole bunch of supporting documents. It's got the RFQ itself. It's got some documents that were produced by LRS Architecture to help you understand the dimensions of the site. It's got renderings. It's got some market context information. It's got some information about other hotels in the area, apartment multifamily housing projects that you may want to use to do your financial underwriting, and an engineering review of the site that includes geotechnical, environmental, and other information. So hopefully we've tried to answer as many questions as you might have and put it in kind of understanding the site and understanding how you could develop it. And those documents are there. Okay, so then I want to talk about the city's vision. We did a bunch of sessions with the city council, and also did a public survey. We had 184 respondents online. And one of the things we asked people to do is tell us, we gave them a bunch of vision statements, and we said, which of these vision statements do you like the most? And the two that are in bold were the most highly supported. So ultimately, you know, what people want is to attract people, activity, and revitalization of the downtown. Exactly what that building is, we want you guys to decide. I'll give you a lot of ideas today, but we want developers, tenants, others to bring your creativity to this. And as long as it brings people and excitement and energy, that's what the city wants. Another thing that was voted highly was being a place for locals and visitors. So I think in part that was, you know, if there's commercial spaces, we don't want it to be so fancy, so high end that it's not a place where locals feel really welcome, and that could manifest itself in other ways. We don't want this to be an exclusive development, but something everybody can enjoy. And you can see here, there's other statements as you go down, also received a lot of support, but less so than the first two. So then we asked people, what do you want to see here? The top choice was a lodging or a hotel. Second choice was housing. So those were kind of themes that we used. But at the same time, again, there was lots of other views of what it could be. And again, I'm going to show you pictures. What you propose here or what you imagine here, it doesn't have to be what I show. We're just trying to illustrate what could be. We also did specific design options, which I show here. So we primarily focused on a 4 or 5 story building, you know, about 50 to about 60 units of either of housing or hotel rooms with ground floor commercial. The 1A was most popular, which was a 4-story hotel. We also asked people, what kind of features would you like to see? The ones that got the most support were ground floor commercial, a rooftop deck, very, very popular, which I tell you, on a day like this and with the southwest view of the courthouse square and of the hills, I would be up there. I'm ready to go up and have a beer today. But so that was very popular. And the third was having a wide sidewalk. On the south side of Mill Street, it's the sidewalks are wider. So here, I think it's about 3 feet of widening would bring it to the same standard as the south side of Mill Street. And that could be done without moving the curb, we think, by just setting the building off the property line by 3 feet north of where the existing property line is. And that's part of the city standards, have slightly wider sidewalks. And other people supported other ideas too. We asked people what one of the goals was to make this compatible with the other historic buildings in downtown. And so we kind of asked people, well, what does that mean? What does historically compatible mean? We showed people pictures of other, you know, urban projects. And the one that people liked best was the Atticus Hotel in McMinnville. Again, doesn't mean you need to design or build the Atticus Hotel in Minville, but that was one that people felt was the most compatible from a design point of view. But at the same time, you know, about 50% of people liked some of the other projects that we showed. Some people, they didn't like the one on the right very much. Very modern wood. So yeah. This was one of the renderings that LRS Architects did. And I am told that in informal polling around the city, people like this image a lot. So, you know, certainly, actually, a couple features. One of the features that's required by code is a corner entrance. Yeah. Most of the, you know, we certainly wanted to use brick facing. I don't believe that's a code requirement. But That's a rendering of the site. I want to at least show you these. And again, you don't have to build this building, you don't have to design it this way, but we wanted to get a sense of what can fit on the site. We did these kind of massing tests. This is the 4-story hotel. The site is it's in the RFQ, so I'm worried I'm gonna get this number a little wrong, but east to west, it's 190 or 200 feet wide. So we've found that you can really easily fit a, 70-foot building north-south and 200 feet wide, quite easily. Kind of worked for us. And we have commercial space on the ground floor. Right now, it's got access from 3 sides, which is kind of unusual. We assume only 2 of those access points will stay here. But it's got there's an existing ingress point here off of Main. And then an alleyway here. There's an existing curb cut here as well. We assume that would go away, but it doesn't necessarily have to. And then, so we essentially got access off of here. This is for the hotel option, came in, and then we're parking at the surface on the back. So this is the housing option. So here for housing, because we felt we needed a little more parking, we came in here. We did tuck under parking on the back and surface parked here. And this is a drive lane. This does highlight one of the other kind of expectations on the site. There is a mural on this building, on the south facade of this building. And the city's expectation is that continues to be viewable and accessible at some level to the public. Here it's pretty modest because it is viewable from the sidewalk, and there's a small kind of walk area here. On the hotel development, we just took access on the alley side and left this open as a plaza space, and felt that could be a fantastic place to put some tables out, have a restaurant spill out into, and obviously people could appreciate the mural from that plaza. So let's see. So we also looked at we also looked at kind of larger and more massive design options to see, no problem, to see what could fit. So here we looked at an L, kind of a maximum capacity of the site, so kind of an L-shaped design where we'd leave the surface parking in the back and then kind of extend the upper floors over that surface parking, and we're able to fit 80 to 90 housing units or hotel rooms. We also just conceptually looked at options where perhaps there could be upper floors of housing and a middle floor that has short-term rentals as an overnight lodging component rather than all hotel floors. So those all I believe would be acceptable to the city. The challenge you get into on accommodating a lot of development on the site, or what kind of is the constraint, is probably parking. And so because if you look at the options, I'm probably going to get the numbers a little wrong, and I have to look at my materials, but we parked the project at about a 0.5 parking spaces per unit ratio, dependent on depends on the scheme, how many units or hotel keys there are. And so we do think that there are opportunities to share parking offsite. There's a couple opportunities that I'll talk about. One is the county, Polk County owns this lot here. It extends for the full block. The south half is striped. It's got about 38 spaces, I believe, on it. And the north half is not striped, but it could accommodate more parking. They're open to a shared parking agreement. It would be not at all hours all day, but it would be, starting in the 5 or 6 p.m. and extending into the morning. But I think there's capacity to kind of add spaces up on the north that maybe that window of sharing time could extend more. We've also talked with adjacent property owners that are open to shared parking agreements. They ask that we not give specifics about their property ownerships now until we have, you know, a developer that we're working with, just so that we don't disturb their tenants and stuff like that. But that we think there's opportunity to share at least 10 to 20 spaces in super close proximity. And then, you know, the city actually just did a downtown parking study. Tyler and others are better resources on the specifics there. I would just say from my observations of having been on the site a lot, you know, as you get to the west and north, there's an immense amount of on-street parking, where tenants won't be, you know, kind of fighting for parking. As you get to the south, you know, there's more parking occupancy, you know, because people are parking to go to other businesses there. Okay, zoning. It's a CBD zone. It allows at least 5 and up to 8 stories, depending on particulars. So there's plenty of capacity there. Wide range of uses. No on-site parking requirements. There's no housing allowed on the ground floor, so that is a limitation. That's also in the. I'll talk more about the agreement with DEQ, which it doesn't necessarily prohibit housing on the ground floor, but additional work would have to be done with DEQ to allow ground floor housing. And that's certainly not, you know, the city doesn't want to see ground floor housing. We also, I'll talk more about it, but the city anticipates a development agreement with the developer. So, you know, I've seen development agreements, in my opinion, are useful, because if there's some impediment in the code or something we need to adjust, then we can do it through that development agreement, assuming the city, it's amenable to the city. There's a Alta land survey. It's on the website. I'm not going to go through that in detail, but it's got the dimensions there. We had an engineering and environmental assessment done for the site. Site served by all utilities. Site geology is covered in that. It's got shallow groundwater, but it's you know, 8 to 15 feet deep. So as long as you're not planning on underground parking, I think it's going to be fine. There's a conditional no further action letter with DEQ, and the main condition is, again, as I mentioned, is no ground floor housing, and that you follow there's a CMMP construction plan. As long as you follow that and don't have ground floor housing, then I think DEQ, I hope DEQ's involvement would be very limited, because there's a letter saying you can go forth and build under those conditions. But I will also encourage you to look at the extensive environmental documentation. Yeah, that's, again, it's on the website. So just briefly, market context. I think the mayor mentioned this is a great location for wine tourism. I've certainly found that in my extensive research. No, but just last week or the week before, the Willamette Valley was named as the #1 wine destination in the world. Yeah. So yeah. I've found the wineries in Polk County to be fantastic. And both the scenery and the wine, and the ones we've talked to are very supportive of this project. I mean, would love to be supportive through providing their wine, their food, their enthusiasm, their guests, driving them to a project here. So I'm kind of starting with the hospitality drivers here. 3 AVAs in close proximity, 41 wineries that are really, you know, Dallas is the closest city to many of those wineries. And we're seeing very ambitious hotel projects being executed in close proximity in locations that I can't, that I think this is a better. So with really aggressive room rates. We're, you know, in close proximity to really the major population centers of the state. So I think we can get tourism visitation, not just from coming out of Portland, but also from the airports in Salem and Eugene and from Central Oregon, which is a natural kind of cross through location. As somebody mentioned, this is showing single family permits, which have exploded in the last few years. So when you look at population or household growth, Dallas is actually growing quite quickly at over 2% annually. So I think we've featured this in the RFQ, but faster than many other communities that I assumed would, such as Newburgh, that I assumed Dallas would not be growing as quickly as those communities. So significant in-migration, significant single-family housing development in the past. In the past, there's been relatively little multifamily development. This is showing median household income. It's increasing from 2020 to 2028 to from about 60-some thousand to 90,000. So a lot of higher income households are moving in. That's where we're seeing, them occupy some of the single-family housing. And between that and other factors, I think it's a natural fit for market rate housing development, but also potentially workforce or other types of housing development. And then the location itself, it's right in the heart of Dallas. It's where you get the festivals. This is Dallas Days in the upper right. And then across the street from 791 Main is the New Morning Bakery. To my eye, I mean, one of the most active commercial, businesses in downtown. It's a great synergy, I think. Yes. 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 Okay, we had to take immediate taker. Yes. So, and they're a great business and open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I mean, just all day. They're going. So, and then yeah. So there's also things happening right now. After the tour, I think we're going to adjourn at Marlene's, which is a new restaurant at the south side of the courthouse square. These two buildings, the city has just been working with the property owners to pursue Oregon Main Street grants. You'll see one of them under construction now. We don't know that 811 Main Street has won. They're renovating regardless of the grant, but and those grants, actually, the amount of those grants has been increased, and they'll do more tenant improvements and then hope to attract new tenants. The owner of that building is a pretty experienced downtown property owner, so with existing tenancy. So we think that'll be a vibrant storefront starting sometime this summer or whenever reconstruction wraps up. So in terms of development incentives and deal structure, so first of all, the city is just going to champion the project, hold the land until the developer is ready to take control of it. Until often I found, we want to get the entitlements, make sure all entitlements are right, and the developer has financing in place before title is transferred to the developer. Our assumption is it's a fee simple land sale. As I said, we anticipate a development agreement so that clarifies the conditions under which development's happening. Usually that's a benefit. But I also would assume it'd spell out the requirements of the developer and the city, if any. So I say potential incentives here, and the reason I say potential is these are, subject to a development proposal that the city's in support of. We don't want to commit to anything absolutely before seeing what developers come to the city with. But we've talked about, and the city's open to a land write down. So write down the value of the land at sale. The city has a DEQ grant with $60,000 remaining. I'm not sure exactly what we do with this, but probably it'd be helpful, I think, just to make sure everything's buttoned up and there's no concerns at DEQ. And that's for brownfield assessment and remediation. So we've looked at tax abatement programs and are open to those, either the VHDZ or MUPT, which are both 10-year residential tax abatements. There's an enterprise zone already in existence, which would subject to particulars of that program would probably provide a 3-year tax abatement, or it would provide 3-year tax abatement for a hotel. And then we systems development charge, either their deferral credits or others. So a possible credit situation would be, I showed a plaza on the site that probably could be creditable against parks, SDCs. There's other possible credit opportunities. And the SDCs could be deferred. Possibly they could be paid for by the city's urban renewal agency, although that's subject to the availability of funds in the agency. And then if it's a hotel project, it will kick off transient lodging tax. 30% of the TLTs would go to the city's general fund. We just want to be a good partner on that. If it's a hotel project, we want to kind of strategize with how to best to use that TLT to drive, tourist stays at the property. And then, as I mentioned, it's in a zone where Main Street grants you can apply for and win Main Street grants. Those are up to $400,000. It's every 2 years. So we missed the 2025 cycle. So it'd have to be the 2027 cycle, but we would see that possibly as going towards tenant improvements in the building for the ground floor commercial space or something else. Yeah. And then, we're open to pursuing other grants, loans, or investments. We've looked at these other programs like the state's new Moderate Income Revolving Loan Fund, CPACE, which would need to be adopted by the county, but it's another financing tool. It's other Oregon counties have adopted. So we're open to those, but would need to investigate more. We talked about timing in the RFQ. Be great to break ground soon. We also know that it's a tough financing environment. So, the city wants the right project. They're willing to wait, but we don't wait forever either. So sooner is better than later. But the best project is kind of the most important thing. Statement of qualifications, contents. We tried to make this easy. That's my biggest message. What is not required in your submittals are designs of any kind. No detailed designs, no financials. Again, it's not supposed to be complex. Our goal is to receive something that's relatively simple for you all to put together. And then once we have an initial submittal, we plan to shortlist 2 or 3 shortlisted teams, and then talk more deeply about what you would really plan to build here and the particulars of that and the deal structure. But what we did request is a vision, 1 to 2 pages, just kind of paint a picture for us of what you envision here. We did ask about within that vision of what you think the timing would be, and also if there are kind of deal structure points that are must-haves, so that we don't, we understand what you'd need to make it work. And then beyond that, who's your team? What comparable projects have you done? Who is the key staff people that are part of your team? What are comparable projects you've completed? And I think we said 3 to 5 references, a handful of references. Ideally certainly we're open to any kind of references, but I always appreciate if there's any other cities, counties, public agencies that you've worked with, because that's our perspective. So that is, and then, so if you have questions, you're welcome to ask today, obviously, but if you continue to ask questions, we would like to get them by next Thursday so that we can then post the Q&A to the website, and then SOQs are due on May 29th. And then here's our map. So we're going to walk over to the site, and then, as I said, we'll go to Marlene's, which is right there. I don't know what she's got planned for us, but I'm looking forward to something tasty to snack on and drink. So that's my presentation. And I would love to hear any questions from you all, either online or in person. I'll start with online. Ben, do we have any questions from the online audience?
We do. Damon Olson asked, is MUPTE approved and in place?
It is not. It is not approved and in place. Yeah. I guess I'll extend just to say that, it's something we've, we're aware that this is going to be, it's a challenging project, even though it's, the brownfield conditions are certainly manageable. It's a challenging project because of the financing environment, because it's pioneering in terms of, there's not a comp next door. So we know that there's going to need to be some city incentives. And so that's why we've talked about MUPT, and the city's conceptually open to it.
A follow-up question from Damon is occupancy and vacancy ratios for current lodging.
For current lodging, so what I would look at, really what we looked at to understand the lodging market, is there are two lodging properties in Dallas now, the Best Western, and there's another small property just north on Riverside. Thank you. What we really looked at to assess, room rates, occupancy, was we did two analyses. One that we called the Small City Boutique Hotel Comp Set, which we had 8 hotels. That includes the Independence Hotel, the Atticus, a range of other hotels kind of in, small, nearby, both in the valley and on the coast. We have the statistics for that are on the website. If you scroll down, they're probably item 7 or so. That has the rates, the occupancies. We also looked at CoStar defines, they have a market area that's called the Oregon West Hospitality Sub-area. And so we showed the data for that. And I would rather have you look at that than me try to cite it off the top of my head. In both cases, the occupancy was north of 60% though. And, in terms of rates, you can see anything I believe the small city, the boutique hotel comp set was, the ADR was approaching $230 a night. Mr. Southgate, yes. Yeah.
What's I was like you with the
Yeah. Well, a good question. I mean, having talked to one of the home builders in the area, his view is most of his buyers are commuting to the I-5, somewhere in the I-5 corridor. So, and if you look at the data, most of them seem to be driving to somewhere in between Salem and Woodburn or Wilsonville. But you're probably getting, you're certainly getting some who are commuting to Yamhill County, to Portland, but it's mostly, that's the commute direction. I'm also intrigued with the whole kind of, we're seeing a lot of residential activity switch from very urban kind of Portland metro areas to small towns throughout the West, throughout the country. So I think that probably is driving some of it. But yeah, if you look at the data, most people are commuting to, Salem's, or perhaps somewhere between Albany and Wilsonville with it elsewhere. And in a lot of the average, from my view of it, it seems like the average home price is somewhere around $500,000. So, it's a new, probably I'd guess 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, but I can't say for sure. And most of it, sorry, is kind of, most of the development is on the north side of the city. Much of it is on the northeast side of the city, although there's more happening in the northwest coming.
Hey, Brian, if you could, sorry, repeat the questions in the room for our folks online.
Okay, so I will repeat the question, but not the answer, which, so the question what's driving the growth of housing in Dallas and the household growth rate? Yes.
Is this the city-owned property that somebody want to sort of review for development, or are there others that, possibly join together as a?
It's certainly the only one I'm aware of. I did mention a county property, but I'll turn that over to Charlie. Yes, I will. The question was, are there any other city-owned properties that are under this sort of review and potential disposition?
So this is the only city-controlled site that's in the downtown that's currently on the market. There is the potential, though. There's a property just to the north of this parcel that's privately owned that could be on the market if the development, worked out. So I think they'd be open to that. Do you want to show that?
Yeah, I hadn't had any extremely recent conversations about that, but and I've forgotten the address. You're referring to this property, Charlie? Yeah.
So that's 761 Main. Right now, it's divided into three leasable spaces. The rear portion of the building is currently unoccupied. And at that time, when we had our first conversations with the property owner, it was around, could there be the option of, if it was a hotel project, for example, to use the back part of that building for some auxiliary hotel use, like a conference center or laundry facilities or whatever. And so, they were certainly open to that because the way the building is divided, that rear space isn't as desirable because you don't have street frontage. And so it does kind of lend itself to some unique occupancy. But again, that building, the entire building's been recently remodeled. But I think the ownership would probably entertain something if it made sense. It's not actively on the market, but I think it's a potential.
And the owner, the owner also brought up the possibility to actually park in the back half of the building, which it's a nice historic building. So in some ways, I'd hate to see that happen, but if it needed to, it possibly could. Any other questions, Pat?
Is the city just as supportive of housing as it is supportive of lodging?
The city is the city is excited about. I'd go back to the vision. The things that have tested the best is how do we get vitality, energy, revitalization here. That said, the most enthusiastic support among the council, among the citizens has been for lodging. So I'd say if we get two equal proposals ultimately, and one is a great hotel project and one is a great housing project, the city would probably lean towards the hotel project, but the city's open and enthusiastic for both.
Understand that, but I can surmise why they were.
Yeah. So the question was, why would the community prefer hotel to housing? Yeah, right. I don't know that we really asked why, but my sense is that for two reasons. One, I think there's just fewer hotel projects. From my point of view, too, a hotel is a little more special. There's a lot of housing projects. There's not as many hotel projects. And I think there was a feeling that it might create more of a buzz, more energy, more activity. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I were to add to that, Brian, I think what you've said is accurate. We're looking at a lot of the downstream economic benefits, in addition to just this one project of what it can what it can synthesize and add to and catalyze. We think if, if there was some, we're trying to build a bit of a tourism economy here because again, we really think, we don't have to look very far. You look what's happened in Yamhill County over the last several decades, and it makes sense that the next iteration of Yamhill County would be Polk County. And so we want to be able to take advantage of that. This is a great centrally located site with all the amenities, and I think it has the potential to catalyze a lot of other developments. That being said, a nice housing project would certainly be welcomed as well, but we just see a lot of additional economic impacts from a lodging property. Plus, we don't have a lot of lodging options in Dallas right now, so we believe the market is there. And it's a bit of a chicken and an egg. If we want to grow a tourism economy, we have to have some lodging, because obviously people need to stay. We want to encourage that, but the revenue that we use to market ourselves comes from lodging taxes. So there's that revenue piece of the pie. So it's, again, a chicken and egg in terms of you need lodging to support tourism and you need tourism to support lodging. And right now, we just don't have a lot of options in terms of lodging. We also have some major employers in the community who regularly invite in business clients or prospective, talent or contractors or whatever. And they have very limited options of where to house those folks when they come in for a short amount of time. And so this would be, kind of it would be a convenient showpiece property for those sorts of clients as well.
Something from the council's perspective, housing is certainly something we would look at. I think the reason we lean more towards the hotel was that it also would be easier to incorporate a restaurant. And we also looked at the parking situation where it might be a better situation for a hotel in the parking. And also reaching out to a lot of the vineyards around the area and doing some market research, we found that a lot of these vineyards are busing people into the area to tour the vineyards and then busing them back to Portland for the night at quite an expensive hotel. So there was some or quite a bit of interest from the vineyards to support this from a hotel site as well. So.
I would just have a comment more than a question. That is, I would just encourage you as a city, regardless of how this gets developed, you do both the housing and in the hospitality, you get the full capitalization that you're really hoping to get. And they don't necessarily have to happen together tomorrow. This site could be one use, and I would be encouraging you to be grooming through your inventory of what might be the next site, because it's going to occur in a couple of steps. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a timing issue, right? I mean, just to be honest with you, the hospitality restaurant component is the hardest of asset classes to finance right now. It's going to be, maybe some of the other folks in the area have more experience, but we have a couple of hotels nearby, and it's a tough market. I think it's going to be challenging for either use, but I think the hospitality is going to be more challenging. But I also think you need it. But I think you need to think it through on a time basis. Maybe this first one's housing, and then you're looking carefully for the next one for that hospitality.
Thank you.
So the comment for those online was that, in reality, the city needs to be looking at both options, housing and lodging, not necessarily all on this one site, but more holistically. I think that was the gist of what you were saying, Dwight. I should point out that, just a few blocks north of this site, there is a 5-story multi-housing project at 430 Main that's underway in terms of planning right now. There's also another one just a few blocks south of this that Polk CDC is going to be managing that's also in the works. And so even if this site goes 5-story, 4-story housing, it's likely there could be one or two others that hit the market before this one in the downtown. So from that perspective, I think some of that market demand or need and mix will be met at some other sites.
I would just like to say from point of clarification, as Charlie mentioned, the project of 430 Main, so that'll be a market rate project. The one south of the site, I believe in Washington, is by the Polk CDC, and that will be I believe a 60% AMI affordable housing project. So it'll be, yeah, they'll be hitting different parts of the market. Yeah, yeah, you bet.
Discussing that. The ground floor residential, I understand there's a GDQ issue.
Yeah.
Let's say work through that looking for the city, but is there, it sounds like there's also a zoning prohibition on ground floor or preference, okay. Just an observation that.
Yeah.
With the question, but projects I've been involved in, sometimes you have a second tier street or something like that, and retail space is a lot, you know, it's tough to do.
Yeah.
And it's often a lost leader, and so like maybe live work or something like that, which may not be a pure residential. In fact, that would be my question. Would live work be classified as residential, or could it be on the ground floor?
Let Brian take that one.
Will you try to repeat the gist of the question?
Yeah, so the question was really, talking about the city's zoning requirements for ground floor residential in the central business district, and can you consider a live work unit where you have residential living space on the ground floor with, a person that works, from their office at home as a use that would be considered maybe non-residential for the purposes of zoning. I think the city would be open to, looking at that and having that conversation. I don't have a definitive answer for you, but certainly I think the council is interested in having this project and this property being, revitalized and redeveloped. And there's going to be, some give and take. So I would say that, yeah, there's open to the conversation. I think live work units, in my experience, have gone the way that you're talking, describing, looking at that as more of a commercial, or at least a hybrid where that's acceptable on the ground floor. So there's precedent for that in other communities. Mm-hmm.
I would just say that there could be some more time involved in terms of the land use process, though, to get to that, because it wouldn't be, as our code reads, an outright permitted use. And so we would have to, like Brian said, we'd have to consider it, but that consideration involves some kind of a land use process. So it could add some time and uncertainty to a project, certainly. But I think we want to make a project work as best as we can, but we have to work within the codes that we have adopted currently.
I guess I do want to address, so there's two issues around ground floor residential. One, as you mentioned, is the city's code. The other one is with DEQ. My experience with DEQ, I mean, the way I read the DEQ documentation is that if the developer wants to pursue ground floor residential, they're not foreclosing that. They're not saying that's not possible, but that additional process, additional assurances that the project would be developed in such a way that it's environmentally safe, additional work would need to be done to make them comfortable with that. Whereas the existing no further action just says, as long as you don't build ground floor residential, you can do whatever you want on this property. So it's an additional hurdle with DEQ. The other thing is, so is just the point that, this building, it's not quite as big as you might think. And I think this building or a building on the site can be designed in such a way that you wouldn't be required to create too much ground floor retail. I mean, if you have a lobby, you're going to need to have a lobby space. And I certainly would, I think it'd be ideal to have commercial space on Main. And by the time you put in a commercial space in a lobby, you're not left with, and you may have a workout room or something on Mill, so at a minimum, if you have a commercial space, I've frozen here, but if you have if you have a commercial space and some kind of community room or workout space for if it's a residential project and then a lobby, you've occupied all the frontage. And you have tuck under parking in the back. So it's not a vast building where you're creating 200 feet of all over the place and we're requiring you to have commercial fill up all that space. Yeah. But I would certainly be in support of, some well-designed live work. I think that can be really energize the streets and be good use. Any other questions? You're all good, Ben? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Let's take a 1-block walk and get some sun. Thank you to everybody who joined us online.